is a paid program. Advice and opinions expressed during the program are solely that of Heiar Insurance, not necessarily WBEV or Good Karma Brands. Welcome into Senior Solutions on Taking Care of Business with Heiar Insurance. I've got Matt Heiar here with me today. Matt, how you doing?
Good. How are you today?
Doing very well. I'm suddenly getting very hungry. We had a great conversation before the show started. Apparently, you are also a lover of cheese.
Yes, absolutely.
I've just come into a lovely supply of cheese. So the person who delivered it, thank you. You know who you are. But we're not here to talk about my eating habits because that would probably lead us into talking about how I am ill-prepared medically. But let's talk about what it is you guys provide there at Heiar Insurance. Give us a little background on Heiar.
Yeah. So with Heiar Insurance, basically we try to be the one-stop shop for your retirement. So once we retire, we lose our health insurance. The checks stop coming in. So it's like, okay, we got to create an income plan. What about our life insurance? Did it continue on? What about funeral trust? And then we also have Rob, who works at our office, who's also on every third Monday of the month, who does our estate planning, and he helps with wills and trust. So we try to just, wrap everything into one and try to help you out so you have we're your go-to people, essentially, and we're local, and we're here, and you can physically come in and sit down and talk with us, and basically we create a custom game plan for everyone.
Now, there's always a lot of, misinformations, or I heard this from my neighbor, I heard this from my uncle, I heard this from my cousin, sister, brother, whatever, about how these things work. But having it as a one-stop shop, that means people can come to you and get all that information, and it's not hearsay at that point. It's directly from the people who know.
Absolutely. And the most misinformation, I would say, is from neighbors, friends, family, trusted, individuals or trusted contacts that told them one thing, and that was the plan for them, but it's not for you. So that's why everyone has a different game plan. Everyone retires at different ages, and everyone has different insurance needs, income needs. So yes, what we did with your neighbor, just because you guys are both coming to the same place, doesn't mean we're going to have the same game plan for you. That's what makes my life interesting, where every day is different, and it's pretty cool.
I kind of think of it as if everything fit everybody the same way, we'd all be driving, Priuses, because that would fit every family for every reason, every need. But that's why some people have minivans, some people have pickup trucks, some people have, two-door sports cars.
Absolutely, and that's why that's a great analogy. I like that. I don't have to use that one.
You're welcome.
But you're so right, and that's why I always preach it. There isn't a right answer because there's not, and someone, and it's even when it comes to husband and wife, like when we pick insurance. With group insurance, like you and your wife, right? Mm-hmm. You're on the same plan. You don't really have an option, though.
Oh, okay.
I mean, do you?
Do I? Well, no. No, because I'm the only one that works, and yeah, so she's got to be on my stuff, right?
Yes. The only other option would be if, like, she had a job and offer of group insurance, maybe she took that plan.
Okay.
But basically, yes, every year during your enrollment period, it's like, here's our plan for next year. Are you signing up or you're not?
Right.
But now when we get to Medicare, why it's so overwhelming, it's because guess what? You have a plethora of plans, a plethora of companies, and different options and different, plans suited to each individual need. So that's why it's not just cookie cutter where, yes, do this, this is the best option. It's not quite like that. And that's why it's really fun because, we just preach education. All we do is educate you and just try to make sure you understand why we're picking this plan, why we're recommending this, what's going to happen if this or X, Y, and Z happen. So we just kind of roll with it, and we can only worry about today. We're planning for next year, basically, but, that's when we get to see. So right now, we're in our enrollment period. Fun time of year.
Right.
Busy
time of year.
Joe Namath is on TV. So
I've seen some of the commercials. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yes, and they're going to get worse because the enrollment period starts next week, October 15th to December 7th. So that is when that's when everyone should be evaluating their insurance, but mainly for your prescription drug plans, your standalone Medicare Part D plans, and also your Medicare Advantage plans.
Wonderful. So we're going to go from all these political ads right into Medicare and health plans and all of that. My TV is going to be broken, I think, for this.
Yep, the mute button.
Yeah.
Yes, the mute button, because that's why these ads, the thing is that's so frustrating about them is they don't talk about the actual insurance. They talk about a gym membership. They talk about over-the-counter items. They talk about things Medicare doesn't cover. And limits apply to all of that. And maybe it is exactly what you need, but I'm more of a visual person.
Right.
So like we have a big screen at the office where I put everything up, like in Dodge County next year, there's 38 Advantage plans.
38.
38.
That's a lot of choice.
Yes, and we're not going through 38 plans, but you should be able, because when people are calling you, they're calling you from certain providers, so guess what they're going to show you? Their plans.
Right, of course.
Yep, and maybe it is a great plan, but once you want to compare it to all the other plans, and that's why the government website, Medicare.gov, is a great website to kind of compare and contrast the different plans and drug plans to see what makes the most sense for you. Now, with drug plans, it's a little bit simpler because if you're on a drug plan, that means you typically most of the time are taking out a Medicare supplement, which those are policies. You don't have to renew those. Your benefits are locked in, but you need credible prescription drug coverage, so you have to have a drug plan. I know, your mind's blown.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't realize that they were separate in a way where one was renewable and one is not, doesn't have to be.
Well, you only have to wait 30 years, and then we'll start talking to them. Because
Okay.
every time, like I did this with Amy too, she's like, oh, well, worrying about it. I'm like, everything I'm saying right now could be completely different in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years.
Right.
So we're just going with, what we have right now. But yes, the standalone prescription drug plans is pretty cut and dry. It's basically, we type in your meds, where you pick them up at the pharmacy, whatever's the cheapest for next year, that's your plan.
Easy enough.
Yes. So.
Is that like the easiest part of it, really?
Well, that is the easiest part, but the problem is it's just some of these medications are so expensive. And there's no generic options, so it gets really expensive. So now, with the introduction of the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act, Medicare made a big change. So the big change for January 1st of 2025 is you cannot spend more than $2,000 for your drug costs for next year. After you spend $2,000, and that's including your premiums, deductibles, everything, all combined, once you spend $2,000, your medication costs will be zero. So our biggest fear was, are these plans going to be much, much more expensive because these insurance companies are going to have to eat the cost?
Right. It's got to go somewhere.
Yes. And, and there's certain medications that are $2,000 a month.
Right.
So it can add up quick. Now, another cool part is if you are on a medication that's $2,000, $3,000 a month, it could be a pretty expensive January the first time you fill it.
Right.
So what they did is they came out with a payment plan, where you can call your carrier and you can divide your payment costs throughout the year. So obviously $2,000 divided by 12.
Right.
So that is an option, because obviously after the holidays, you're spending money. You might even be, being a snowbird and going south. It's hard. Things are tough. Right. Things are expensive nowadays. So you can divide that out to kind of, put a little less stress, on just taking your whole Social Security check, January 1st.
And so, like, if this is a medication that maybe it's a regular thing, you take it every month. It's a reoccurring medication. So now like, hey, I was spending $8,000 a year, $10,000 a year to have this med. Now it's $2,000. And
yep. So it's I think it's a trial and error thing right now. Like we're kind of seeing how because they're 1-year contracts, so I don't know how it's going to go next year.
Right. So
we're going to have to see how it goes, but it's not going too bad right now. It's just these. Basically, so we have errors and omission insurance. Like that's what covers us. So like if we make a mistake, like I say, hey, yeah, your surgery's covered,
right.
And it's not. Well, that's a mistake by me.
Right.
So I have to have, something to back me up, almost like auto insurance, right? But with now all these companies we typically are contracting with, well, they're not accepting agents now. So we can guide you to the best of our ability on the government website, like what to pick. But a lot of these plans, typically we were signing people up. We were calling on their behalf, because we were their agent. We really can't be agents now.
Oh, wow.
I know.
That's way different than what we've talked to you before about.
Yes. So it kind of throws a curveball into everything. So, we're going to do our best to guide you on what plan to pick. And basically we can assist you by just, we're just enrolling basically on the government website, you just clicking the enroll button and signing up.
Right.
The frustrating part about this is, so I run your meds and I'm like, yep, if you get that medication, it's $40 a month. This one's $10 a month. Well, you could fill it twice and they might send you a letter saying we're no longer covering that.
Oh.
So then people are calling me saying like, wait a second, you told me, you said, and it's like, well, I did. Well, the government website said, and they're 1-year government contracts, which they have to submit to the government by July for them to approve it for this time of season, and they could change it. It's just, I know, and it's really
Just pull the rug right under it.
and and it feels like it reflects on me, and it's like, so it is a frustrating time of season, and more so in like January, February, where they get that letter. But there is a couple options if you read in the letter, and it's clear as mud, but you can have your doctor write a letter to the actual drug company and explaining XYZ, why we've tried all these other options, they didn't work, or they're allergic to them. There's circumstantial situations all the time. So, that's one option. Or they usually give you a list of a couple other medications that, they would recommend. Okay. So if you haven't taken those other options, that might be one way to go. But there is, and if they do, if the doctor does write that letter, they can approve it and say, hey, okay, we'll give you a one-time this year exception to the formulary. Well, they'll cover the drug, but just for you, not for everyone.
Gotcha.
I know. So that's why it's a lot of paperwork, but it's actually less paperwork this year because we're really not doing applications because we can't, because they won't let us. But it was kind of a shocker, because we contracted with all these companies, and then they kind of just sent out an email saying, well, we're not accepting agents, basically saying we're not paying commissions. So it's tough. So we're trying to work around it. We're saying, so we're still guiding people, we're seeing people, but we're advising on the best thing. But yeah, if you have a question about your drug plan, or you get that letter, we can't call on your behalf now. Wow. Or if you move and you want an address change, typically we could go on our agent portal and update it.
Right.
You have to call now. So it's kind of taking it out of our hands, which is a little frustrating because that's what we do. I mean, that's what we do every day is customer service and helping people with, just weird situations like, hey, my bank got hacked. Can you switch my automatic bank withdrawal to this one? And we can't now.
That's because I know you talked in the past. You've said, let us be the one to make the phone call. Let us be the one to talk to agents. We know the buttons to push. We know the words to say. We know all the things that make stuff happen. Now you got to put it in the hand of, of the individual. Are you still able to kind of advise them like, hey, you should say this, you should call this number, you should?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Still call us, and we'll give you, we'll give you the right questions to ask and stuff, or the process, of what to do. But it's like now we have to train people to be agents, on the phone call, and like how to, what to ask, what to do, what confirmation numbers. So yeah, it's much different. And the worst part is it's not every drug company. There's 14 drug plans next year. So there is one company that is accepting agents and continuing. But the problem is I'm a little nervous about, just other agents, not locally, but just, nationally, obviously, calling and just promoting that one plan.
Because that's where they get a commission out of.
Yes. And it's not the right plan for you.
Right.
Will you still have drug coverage? Absolutely. But could it be more out of pocket? Yes. Could the premium be higher? And I feel like it's everyone's moral compass comes into play. Like, hey, I got to feed my kids, so I get what some people are doing, but at the same time, is it best for the consumer?
Well, it feels to me like common sense wise, as I'm listening to this, it sounds like the drug plan companies went, okay, we're essentially losing money on this monthly income from these drugs. So we're going to save money by not paying commission. That was their balance.
And to make it even worse, the government gives them money every year. Of
course they do.
But
right.
These companies are like, whoa, like we're going to have to eat these costs after $2,000. What do we do? So they gave them more money, because of this big change, which is fine, because we're helping out the consumer. But at the same time, they got more money, or they got money, then they got more money. And then they're like, oh, by the way. And I was like, that's tough, and that's where I'm just nervous. I haven't heard of it or seen it, or anything, but I just don't know what's happening on all these phone calls and emails and mail, mailers that people are getting if they're just promoting one plan now.
Right. Well, I guess that is exactly why, when you hear people talk about, their Medicaid plans, the drug plans and things, sometimes they feel like things aren't being honest, they're not being shady, they don't understand what's going on. That's why it's so important to have somebody who is a local advocate for you as much as possible, and at least kind of understands how to navigate things.
Yeah, I mean, we live in a small town,
Right.
and me coming into my mom's business, everyone just had the utmost respect for her. So it was a little nerve wracking,
Right.
like, oh gosh, I got big shoes to fill. Not literally though, because she's tiny.
That she is
But-
tiny. Yeah.
But yeah, so it was, a little nerve wracking, and it doesn't take long to do something, silly like that. Like, whoa, I wanna get paid. So take this plan. It's the best one. And really, is it? And maybe it is for some people,
Right.
but there's a very popular plan that a lot of people are just staying on. Everyone was worried about these drug plans just raising, huge premiums because they knew that they're going to have to eat a lot of cost. And a lot of them stayed the same, if not went down.
Okay.
Which is even, you're like, oh,
Right.
being an agent, you're like, oh, really? You guys are cheaper and more attractive now. And But, I mean, that's why we always want you to be looking. You're going to get your book of changes every year, and it says in 24, this was your premium. 25, this is your premium. It says your copays for tier 1s, tier 2s. And if you don't see a lot of change, it just rolls right over to the next year. So you don't always have to do something. They're meant to review, but not necessarily switch.
Right.
So if you can save $20 for the entire year next year, probably not worth getting a new card, new company,
Right.
new payment books and stuff.
Having to update that every time you go to the doctor, the pharmacy, whatever, make sure all the information's correct.
Yes.
Right.
So like it has to make sense, So that's why, some people are like, nope, I still want to hear it from you. And that's fine, but we will advise you. It kind of stinks when they take, part of our job away and they're like, well, we want to hear it from the customer, not you. And because they will not talk to us with HIPAA laws and stuff if we are not their acting agent. Even if my mom signs someone up, like I can't really call on behalf of someone else. Like I have to be the agent of record. So, and it's just the drug plans, not with every company and stuff like that. But yeah, that's where we've been dealing with right now because we got to see all the plans October 1st.
Right. So you haven't had them on your lap for very long.
No. So luckily there was 20 drug plans this year. Now there's 14, so it's a little less. I wish there was just one drug plan.
Right. Make it easy.
Everyone, you don't have to switch. You're on the same plan.
There you go.
But that would be butterflies and rainbows world. So that's not happening. But that's where, yes, we just want you to be vigilant, of this. And also with all the telephone calls coming in and the soliciting, scam calls come in with it.
Right.
And we have to be vigilant about it. Do we have to read disclaimer?
You have just hit the right time. Absolutely. I do want to remind everybody as well that you can call in and ask a question if you like of Matt Heiar. You can reach us at 885-4446 or 887-9595. That'll be our call and text line. So feel free to do so. And then we do want to remind you that this is a paid program, and the advice opinions expressed during the program are solely that of Heiar Insurance, not necessarily WBEV or Good Karma Brands. I want to go back to something here a little bit. When is it too soon to come in and talk to you guys? Let's start with retirement. I guess that's the first question. Retirement.
Okay, for retirement, there's never too soon.
Okay.
Like you could be 30 years old, you could be 40 years old, 50 years old. It's just nice to hear, where you're at, where you're in place, and kind of going from there, like what's in your 401k, what's your debt to income ratios, and just getting that and then setting a goal.
Okay.
Whether it's budgeting, whether it's starting like a Roth, which is a little bit different. That's where you don't get to deduct it on your taxes, but it's just another bucket we can use for retirement. Because typically everyone just has a 401k, 403b, and that's every time you touch that, it's taxable.
Right.
Yeah, so it defers for a long time, but then once you start pulling it out of it, so we have to be thoughtful because taxes are a scary situation when it comes to retirement.
Yeah, we've talked about how every bit of income, everything you pull to buy something, that stuff gets taxed on. I did have a question for you, something about that I thought of recently because it's come up a couple of times in conversations with some of our manufacturers in the area where they offer an ESOP program. Mm-hmm. And when somebody retires, they usually are given, from my understanding, a certain amount of time with which they have to cash out that ESOP.
Yep.
Which then, that looks like a huge amount of income, doesn't it?
Yes. Well, it depends. If we can, depends on the plan rules, but if we can roll it then we don't have to pay the taxes on it.
So roll that into like a Roth IRA or something like that,
Or into an IRA, yes.
An IRA, okay.
Traditional.
Not Roth, but okay.
Yep, traditional IRA is just basically it's keeping the same tax entity and it's not going in your possession.
Okay, now we do have a call on line one. Let's go ahead and go to the phones. Hello, you are on with Matt Heiar.
Good morning. I have to tell you a story on a prescription I had this week. The doctor sent it in. The pharmacy goes, $97. I'm like, whoa. So I look it up on GoodRx, and it was 50-something. But I could buy the same drug, generic, over the counter or on their shelf for $24. So I just saved myself $70-some by just doing a little investigation.
Yes, and that's what you have to do. You have to be your own advocate because, at the pharmacy, no offense to them, but they're just running your card and this is the price.
Right.
But I think the situation that you ran into is it was subject to deductible.
No. Not that I know of, but it was a nasal spray.
Okay.
And even another nasal spray he prescribed, she goes, $30. I says, okay, let's look it up on GoodRx. I got it for $13.
Wow.
Just because you have drug insurance, you don't have to use it.
Right. Yeah, you can't use both at the same time.
People have to invest. You have to take care of yourself.
That is true. Especially in times like this when things are more expensive, it's always nice to do your research.
So, I'm just emphasizing, just because you have drug insurance, just because the doctor sent it in, check around. Your smartphone, that's what you have it for.
Yes. No, absolutely.
Yeah, very true. Thanks for the call.
Thank you. So that's a great question because a lot of people are doing that. Now the problem is if you just give the pharmacy $97 and pay for it,
right,
it's too late. And
right, you can't go back and be like, wait.
There's no returns on medications.
Right.
But it's frustrating because, who hates, we all learn the hard way a lot of times.
Yeah.
But that's when it comes to money like that, it's like, if we didn't do that. So sometimes just being like, well, let me think about this or let me do some research. Just like she did, and she looked up like GoodRx, I think Single Care, I think is another one. But there's a bunch of different. Mark Cuban has one, I think, where they can find medications. And typically the situation is like you get a cream once a year because you get psoriasis or something.
Right.
And they'll tier those as a higher tier drug, even though it's generic.
Right.
And it's subject to deductible. A lot of people don't know they have deductibles because deductibles for drug plans are only subject to tier 3 drugs or higher. So tier 1 and 2, you're paying your $0 copay, $5 copay. You don't even realize you have this deductible. But then you get that one random cream and you go pay for it. The retail cost is $100. So guess what you're going to pay? $100 because it's all subject to deductible. Well, that's where a lot of times, stepping back, saying, hey, let's look at GoodRx quick. And we've done it many times where it's like, oh, got it for $30. Because you're getting it once a year. If this is a medication you're doing every month, yeah, we're just going to have to meet the deductible for it to go back down. But and they don't tell us this stuff. Right. And that's what gets frustrating, and that's why if we don't have to find out the hard way, but if we pay for it, it's too late.
And then that leads us back to, you talked about that $2,000 a year drug cost. Obviously, if you go in, you've got a prescription, you're looking at it, and then you go, I can get it cheaper off the shelf. You buy it off the shelf, that doesn't go towards that $2,000 a year. Correct. So if you're looking to try and hit that so that you don't have to worry about it further, you want to follow that prescription. You want to go that route.
Absolutely. And it's not too, that's why $2,000, everyone was excited, but it's not too common that you're spending that much on pharmaceuticals. If you're just taking your typical blood pressure, cholesterol, thyroid pills, those are all maintenance drugs and typically a $0 to $5 copay. So you're not worried about the $2,000. But then some people, like we talked about those medications that might be $2,000-$3,000 a month, this is great for them. Right. So it's like they're trying to make it the best of both worlds. Where like, hey, if you're still on your generic drugs, you're fine. And then, But some of these drug costs, I mean, I've heard of $20,000 a month for some of these chemo drugs.
Wow.
Yes, oral chemo drugs. And I don't know how insurance companies are going to do this, but that's why we're just going to have to wait and see, or if they're going to negotiate the price. But that's why we want to make sure that we're always being our own advocate, just like the last caller, and saying, hey, what are other options? Is there grants for this program? Is there, like I know one of our providers has a medication assistance program. Huge. Right. They really help out. They know like manufacturer assistance programs. So there is a lot of different options, but we want to do the research prior, and you have to be your own advocate.
Right. And that advocacy, that's at the doctor if you're asking if there's a generic version to stuff as opposed to name brand or whatever, that makes a lot of sense. And, you guys can only advocate so much from where you're at. And like you said, there's a lot of, there's walls. There's the HIPAA compliance and things where maybe people can't talk to you. So you can't get the answer.
Absolutely. And, that's why, some people come in with these expensive medications, and, I'm not a doctor
right.
by any means. I see a lot of drugs, obviously, because I run drug plans every year. But, I mean, these are just questions being like, hey, is there another option? Because I'll be like, oh, you got this one. And they're like, yeah, it's expensive. And they just accepted it. Like, oh, it's just what it is. But
right.
What if there's another option that it does the same thing and it's generic, or it's a name brand, but it's cheaper?
Right.
So like we have to be our own advocates, which is, kind of silly to say. It's like, what? For my healthcare?
Right.
But we have to. And asking your pharmacist. Pharmacists are full of information. You're not the only person on that medication. They might say, hey, we have a lot of people doing this, talk to your doctor about this. And because the doctors don't know the prices of these drugs. They might know they might be expensive, but if you're on a group plan, it might be $30.
Right.
So that's why they don't know the exact plan you have, the drug plan you have, if you're on Medicare, if you're not. So that's why we want to just always make sure that we're just asking questions.
Right. And it's much more important for them to know how the drug works and that it will work than how much it's going to cost.
Absolutely. Yes. And, I have people, I'll run their plans, and then it's really expensive, and I'll be like, well, just talk to your doctor. And they do, and the doctor's like, hey, we've tried this, and this, that, like, this is the one thing that works, and okay, quality of life.
Right.
But there's been other times where like, yeah, they said we could switch to this one, or this one, and I run their drug plan. I'm like, I really like this one. I have no idea what it is, but it's way cheaper. And
right.
That's me. I'm frugal. I actually passed frugal a long time ago, but that why won't we start at the cheapest option?
Right.
Maybe it doesn't work, but maybe we'll go to the medium one then, so that's why you have to be your own advocate, asking questions, what's going on, or, why are we taking this? Is there other options? Can we do injections, infusions, instead of an oral medication we pick up from the pharmacy? Right. So having stuff done through the doctor's office typically can be run through the health insurance rather than our drug plan where we pick it up at the pharmacy.
Right.
So just asking these questions are huge. And with anything, I mean, it's not just with your health insurance or life insurance, it's your retirement, it's, anything in general, your job, asking questions is huge. And I've never seen someone get in trouble for asking questions.
Right. And it's really, the more you know, the better off you are. And I mean, I think about, you mentioned 38 plans in Dodge County alone. Excuse me. That's, you give me 38 choices of anything, it's going to take me forever to figure out which one is right.
That is true. And there isn't a right option, because maybe like, oh, you have a lot more diagnostic tests, because you've been having this happen, it's like, oh, well, this plan is actually perfect. It's the cheapest out of pocket, for that procedure.
Right.
So we just take it at a year by year basis, so, but the main thing, like when I'm evaluating these Advantage plans, is the three things, not the over the counter items, not the gym membership, it's more so, what am I paying monthly? Where can I go? Like, is it a HMO? I have to stay in network. Is it a PPO where I can travel and go in and out of network? And what is the worst case scenario? Because in our office, yeah, we do hear a lot of worst case scenarios,
right?
And that's why if we can pick the plan that best suits those three things, that's the plan for you.
Right, because we don't have a crystal ball to know. You can pick a plan that you're like, oh, I'm generally very, very healthy. I run, I work out, I do everything. Everything's wonderful and great and fine. And so you find one that fits your doctor, where you like to go. Everything's fine. But then you have some catastrophic health thing that happens 2 months in, 3 months in.
Absolutely. And that's where, like you mentioned before about retirement planning, when should we come in? When should we come in? The sooner the better. I mean, even if you're like, hey, I'm 5 years out, because I have family and friends that always say that, like, hey, I'm retired in 5 years and I'm going to come see you. And it's like, perfect. But it's better to come sooner than later. Yeah, we probably won't do anything, but we'll kind of talk. We'll get you in the system, get some updates going. Because what if you have a health scare? What if early retirement happens now?
Right.
So that's a huge factor where all of a sudden, instead of rushing, getting a game plan, it's like, well, we already met. We know each other. We know each other's situation, family, beneficiaries, like all this stuff. Do we have an estate plan set up? Life insurance is good, or we don't need the life insurance anymore. We have a better picture moving forward for when we have to do a little bit of what we call crisis planning,
right,
where it's like, okay, you have to retire because your body's not going to let you do that anymore. So that's why there isn't a cookie cutter answer to be like, when you turn 40 years old, you should come see us. It's at any time, and even if we're meeting every year or 2, 3 years, just down the road, because you're 20 years out, that's fine. It's still, we can update the system, get everything going and be like, are we on track for what we want?
That makes sense.
So like, yes, the answer to that, because I get that a lot with life insurance. People are like, shoot me a quote, and I'm like, oh, okay. It's not like those commercials where you could have $5 million for $1 a month, with no health questions.
Right.
Well, I do not control life insurance. It's the underwriters, the actuaries.
Right.
The guys on the hamster wheels. Numbers, numbers, numbers. And, so to get you a quote, I don't even know what these companies will rate you at. Are you going to be an ultra preferred, a standard? And then they have a table that goes to all the letters of the alphabet, A, B, C, D,
Right.
We don't want to go there. But yeah, so like once we find out what they'll rate you at, well, then we could talk pricing.
Right.
Or if it's necessary. So we typically do like a capital needs analysis where it's like, what is this for? What's the purpose? What is our debts? And what is the term we need it for? And does it make sense?
Right.
So life insurance is, it can be a racket. I have people come in with 20 different policies, $1,000, $5,000, $10,000. It's like, why do you have all these?
Right.
And because back in the day, they used to just come to your door.
Oh yeah, you just buy a policy because you think you need it.
Yeah, well,
they tell you, oh, well, you can borrow it against it, or you can, whatever.
Look at the cash value it's building, and it's like, well, it's going to be hard to build cash value when you're paying $20 a month.
Right.
So it has to make sense, and sometimes it's like, do we need this policy right now? Because when you were 20 or 30 years old, you probably had a lot more debt. Your house, kids going to school, growing up. Like, yeah, absolutely, that makes sense. But like now when we're in retirement, it's like, well, the house is paid off. We don't have that debt.
Right.
So why do we have this huge policy that we're paying every month for? So that's why it's so situational with everything we do. We kind of adapt to, okay, hey, this is the situation now. Let's do this and this. And that's why preaching that education, understanding, I want you to leave knowing we did this for this. Right. And some people are like, I don't even want to know. I don't want to know. Well, I still try to instill it in them that, this was the game plan. So if you call me, be like, oh gosh, this just happened, or I lost my job, I have to retire. I don't know. Should I turn on Social Security? And it's like, we planned for this. If this happens, we were going to do this.
Right. We have a roadmap. We knew what we were going to do.
Yes. And that roadmap changes.
Right.
Right. Just like all roadmaps. So that's why it's fun. We get to, just work out, all these things and life events that happen and, and get to know people. And, it's just really cool. You just meet a lot of new friends, by doing what we do.
Well, and it's nice because by you trying to educate people, even as they're walking out the door saying, well, I don't need to know, I just know it works, that prevents them from being the family member who then talks to somebody else and gives them incorrect information. Oh, well, I got this, you should get that too. That might not work. Your situation for retirement may be very different, and your needs for retirement are going to be vastly different.
Yes, and that is the biggest one there is, when we do income planning, it's just because your brother or sister or neighbor has this income plan, that is not yours, because we all live differently.
Right.
Some people are like, hey, I want to do 4 vacations, or I want to have 3 months in Florida. Or some people are like, I don't really travel. I go to my camper, up north and stay there for the summer and come back. So every situation is different. And that's why it's so cool. But it's when you get scared, though, when you retire, like the checks are going to stop coming in. What do I do? And we can help, divert some of that by just like, hey, this is what we do, because everyone just gets a big 401k or something. What do I do with this?
Right.
Don't screw it up, Like my dad just had it simple. He was done working. He told him he's done. They said, sign here, and his pension turned on. So he has that warm, fuzzy feeling knowing, hey, every month this keeps coming in.
Right.
But pensions are kind of going away now.
Right.
They went to the 401ks, which is fine. But the problem is they're not educating on us like, hey, why did you just take $40,000 out? Well, I had $40,000 left in my house. I wanted no debt, because that's everyone's goal is no debt.
Right.
But if your income plan is based on that, saying, hey, no, the first 5 years, that'll pay your house off. We'll add that mortgage to it. We're good. Because if we just pull huge chunks out, that is it looks like you got a $40,000 job.
Right. And, that looks like a year's salary in some cases, just there. And now the government wants their money.
Absolutely they do. And if you have $40,000 in debt, that doesn't mean, hey, take $40,000 out, because you're going to have to take more out.
Right.
And we don't want you raising tax brackets. So that's why your advisors, your insurance agents, and your accountants should all be on the same page. Transparency is huge when it comes to retirement.
Now, when it comes to Social Security, there are some important numbers to know as far as dates and ages, essentially, right? Let's remind everybody what those numbers are.
Let's do that. All right. So basically, we can start collecting Social Security at 62 years old, right?
Okay.
So you're getting basically 70 to 75% of your benefit. Now, if you're born 1960 or later,
Okay.
your full retirement age to get 100% of your benefit is 67 years old. So
All
that's
right.
100%.
So my mom, who was born in 1964, my dad born in 1960, they're both still going to fall under that.
The full retirement age is 67.
67.
Yep.
Okay.
And then the max for your Social Security is 70.
Now, explain that difference then. So 62, 67, 70. If 62 is 70 to 75%, 67 is you get your full benefit. You get a bonus then, essentially, if you can hold out longer.
That is correct.
Okay. How much of a bonus?
So from 67 to 68, they add 8%.
8%.
Yep.
Okay.
That's a fair return.
Yeah. You can't get that on a savings account anywhere.
Right. And then obviously it keeps going 8% to 68 to 69, 69 to 70.
Right?
So if you're 71 years old and you come in and said, I haven't collected my Social Security yet, the government's not going to call you and say, this is all you're getting.
Right.
Like it's frozen at 70. So now, great, you have a much larger, but Social Security is based on life expectancy tables. So you waited till 70 because that number looks great.
Right.
Very satisfying. But the kicker is then you make it to 71 or you only collect 3 checks.
Right.
We're not guaranteed tomorrow. So basically, Social Security there's a few different tests we do to make sure. One is we do a widowed spouse test. We want one much larger than the other one.
Okay.
Because if one of the husband or wife pass away, we lose the lower of the two.
Gotcha.
So we always want to make sure that the surviving spouse will be happy with that, the larger of the 2 Social Securities. The other one is the income test. Are you working? Yes. Do you make over $22,320? Yes, I do. Well, then it doesn't make sense to turn it on.
Right, because that will reduce it down to 0, essentially, right?
Well, every $2 you're over, they take $1 back. And they put it back in your account, but you're not going to get that money.
Right.
It goes in the Social Security fund. So, so say you made $23,320. Well, you're $1,000 over. They're going to readjust your Social Security next year $500 less. And who wants less money?
Right.
So that's why it just doesn't make sense. So that's why there isn't a right or wrong answer, because when the checks stop coming in, we want that warm, fuzzy feeling. And that's probably less that we'll be pulling from other checking accounts, savings accounts, IRAs, 401ks. So it just has to make sense, what we do. And that's why we create these plans where it's like, no, we're good. We already have this planned, and having a plan B, plan C, just moving forward because things happen.
So am I correct in thinking that once you hit 70, even if you are feeling fairly comfortable on what you've got going on savings-wise, whatever, you should turn it on, right?
Well, absolutely. It's not too often we have people wait till 70
Right.
To turn it on because a lot of times people aren't turning it on because of the income restrictions.
Right.
Like you can only make $22,320. Maybe next year's $23,000. That keeps going up, obviously. Right. But once you hit 67, your full retirement age, you can work as much as you want. You can work full time still, and also collect double dip.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
So
now that's a whole different number you're thinking
Yes.
about. All right. So, you might still be perfectly healthy, working a nice job, making $60,000 a year, but, you can still get your Social Security.
Absolutely. And then in the year you turn full retirement age, they raise that income limit. So obviously if you turn it on 62, you have 5 years of we can only make 22,000, 23,000, whatever it is at that time. But the year of our full retirement, so I'm born in November.
Right.
So January 1st of the year I'm going to turn 67, I can make up to $60,000. So that's why some people are if they came in like me and said, I'm waiting till November because I'm still working.
Right.
And I'm like, well, how much are you making? And they're like, well, 50,000. I'm like, you could actually turn it on in January and start collecting right away.
Nice. So, and that's what I guess is another benefit of talking with somebody who knows how it works. The little, I don't want to say loopholes, but the system, the tricks, the things that are in place that can really benefit the individual.
Absolutely. And, they don't teach us this stuff. And I don't expect you to know. It's every person that comes to the office like, well, I don't know anything about this. And or I hear, this is going to be a stupid question. There's no such thing.
Right.
Because we were not taught this stuff. All they did was threaten us with, you're going to get penalized, you're going to get taxed, lifetime penalties, don't screw it up. And that's tough, because we don't know what's right and wrong and stuff. And that's why, you can come to us for guidance. And there's no bill. It's a free consultation. We can talk about it, get a game plan, and maybe we do nothing.
Right.
So that's why working with someone local is huge, especially with your retirement, because if you want money out of your 401k, you don't want to have to call a 1-800 number and talk to a different person, and who knows where you're calling. You want to see someone face to face and be like, hey, what is this I got? What is this bill? What is this letter? And that's why we're here.
I like it. I like it a lot. Remind everybody how they can get a hold of you as we're winding down our time. The numbers, the websites, who they can call, all of that information.
Absolutely. So we are at the Heritage Mall, just down the road here. You could give us a call. Jill is standing by at 920-887-0580. And you could just stop in, give us a call, and we can do our free 45-minute consultation and see if we want to work together.
That's awesome. Matt, every time you come on, I learn something a little bit different and a little bit new. And now learning all this stuff about the important numbers, that's information that I guess I never gleaned from it before, but it really puts it in an interesting perspective. So I thank you for that. And I look forward to having you on again soon.
Yes, if you want to retire.
You got to call Heiar.
Yeah.
There we go. This has been a paid program. The advice and opinions expressed during the program are solely that of Heiar Insurance, not necessarily WBEV or Good Karma Brands.